Could Scott Gimple be teasing Rick Grimes' return in a future spin-off or in Dead City Season 2? And now in today's video, I'm just going to be breaking down the interview that Scott Gimple had a few days ago, and he did tease some things about Rick and Michonne returning in the future and the future of these characters in the Walking Dead universe, so please stay tuned. And now, before we actually get into the video, I'd like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And again, thank you guys so much for the growth. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to ask you all to like this video as much as you guys can. It helps a ton. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. And now, a few days ago at an event called MultiCon, there was a fan who did interview Scott Gimple at that event, and he did ask him about Rick and Michonne's future and just the future of the ones who live in the Walking Dead universe. And now, first of all, I know a lot of people in the Walking Dead community, myself included, have some gripes with Scott Gimple and his direction for the Walking Dead universe, right? It's not really that steady, and a lot of people do say that he makes the wrong decisions when it comes to these characters. But what he said in this interview is very interesting and could be teasing the future of Rick Grimes. Now, first of all, this little interview was posted on Twitter by @TOWL_AMC, which is a fan account. And it's not the official AMC, right? But it is a real interview with Scott Gimple. And now this person does ask him that all the other spin-offs got multiple seasons, such as Daryl Dixon and Dead City. And with The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live having its 1-year anniversary, he asks Scott Gimple if The Ones Who Live is going to have multiple seasons or if it's just a limited time thing. And Scott Gimple does say something very interesting about The Ones Who Live and its future in the Walking Dead universe, and also about Rick and Michonne. So I'll just play the clip for you all here.
Is the plan to maybe continue that show as well, or are we keeping that limited for now?
I mean, the plan was to keep it limited, not necessarily never to see those characters again, but to keep it limited. But I always say you never know. There's so many. I've been very careful to say, oh, that'll never happen, because it does. So, you know, there are possibilities, and there's possibilities of all sorts of strange iterations of shows with those characters and with other characters. So, you know, I think it's entirely possible.
And now there's a lot of things that we could pick out from this interview, and to be honest, it was very interesting, and it does give us a lot of insight in their plans for the Walking Dead universe, and specifically for Rick and Michonne. And now, first of all, Scott Gimple does confirm that The Ones Who Live was a limited series, and I know that a lot of people, myself included, have theorized that The Ones Who Live is going to get a season 2, and that's because they teased it so much, right? And the biggest teaser for that was when The Ones Who Live did premiere a year ago. Scott Gimple himself did say never to a season 2. So I think the season 2 idea was still up in the air for them, and now he's saying that it was always supposed to be limited, but I think their original plan was to keep it limited, and then when the show saw some success, they wanted to go for, okay, maybe we should make a season 2 for it, and then they doubled down on the idea of keeping it limited. And now Scott Gimple does say that, you know, there is a plan, right? And he says that, you know, he always says never say never, and he's very careful to say that it's never gonna happen, and that's because it happens, right? He did say that in the interview himself, and we could take a lot from this, where they're not ruling out the possibility of Rick Grimes appearing, right? And I think that it is very possible, and especially because we did see him a year ago, right? And it was such a long wait to see Rick Grimes again, and then we see him in a limited series, and now he's gone, right? We haven't seen the character in a year. We've gone through Daryl Dixon season 2 and all of that. So I think that there is a possibility that we could be seeing Rick very soon. And Scott Gimple does say in this interview also that there's a possibility for, you know, more spin-offs coming out with these characters, and them showing up in other spin-offs of other characters. So that is also very interesting, and I think that that does tease towards Rick appearing very soon in Dead City Season 2. And I know y'all are thinking that, you know, he didn't outright confirm it, but why would he confirm it, right? Because that would be a cameo type of scene. And I think that it is very, very possible, and I think that the highest likelihood for Rick appearing again is in Dead City Season 2, if it's any sort of post-credit scene or some sort of cameo, right? But I do think that Rick is going to appear in some sort of way, because even the timeline does match up, and by the time that Dead City Season 2 takes place, Rick is already back at the Commonwealth. So yeah, I do believe that this is teasing towards Rick appearing sometime in the future in Dead City Season 2. But I just want to backtrack a bit to the point of where he did confirm that The Ones Who Live was a limited series. And after The Ones Who Live did end, a lot of people, myself included, did think that maybe this was their way of closing the book on Rick Grimes and he might not show up again. But this interview, of course, does confirm that he's going to show up again, and it's always a possibility for him to be in a future spin-off or have a cameo of some sorts, or even them making a crossover spin-off, because the ending of The Ones Who Live was very open-ended and they were very hush-hush about the matter. And even right now, Scott Gimple is very quiet about where and when is Rick Grimes going to appear. But it's good to know that they didn't officially close the book on this character, and we're going to see him in some other spin-off. And going back to my point of him appearing in Dead City Season 2, I think that this is the perfect chance for them to start bringing Rick Grimes back into the picture, because at the end of the day, he is the main character of the Walking Dead universe, and him interacting with Negan is a perfect way to reintroduce him, because the last time we saw Rick in the Walking Dead main show was when he was gonna stop Maggie from killing Negan, and that's why he blew up the bridge and he got taken by the CRM. So it's very interesting to see that the first character that he is going to interact with on screen would be Negan. And even in The Ones Who Live, we did see that Rick mentioned Carl quite a bit, and he did say that his son brought him back when he was talking to Major General Beale. So he still has Carl's promise in mind about sparing Negan. So when Rick sees Negan once again, and I've seen a lot of people point this out, I think he might forgive Negan, and that's of course something that Maggie still hasn't done, but I think Rick might be able to forgive Negan after he hears about everything that he did in Alexandria, where he helped the community, right? He helped with the Whispers, and on top of that, he saved Judith on multiple occasions. So I think that the perfect way to reintroduce Rick Grimes in this universe is to make him interact with Negan. And a lot of people are saying that Daryl is the perfect way, but I think that that is a different moment, and his moment with Negan would be a different moment, because he would see that Carl's promise and his decision to spare Negan finally paid off while he was gone, and Negan is now a good part of Alexandria. He's a good part of the community, and he should forgive him, and he should officially acknowledge the fact that Carl's decision was right, and his decision to spare Negan and at the end to basically save Negan was the right choice to make. And I think that the best part of this would be Negan's reaction to Rick being alive. And that was the one thing we did not see in the main show, right? When Rick left the show, we saw everybody's reaction to Rick's quote-unquote death, except for Negan, because Negan was such an essential part of that moment, but we did not see his reaction to the news coming to Alexandria that Rick blew up the bridge and he was on it. So if they were to make a Rick and Negan reunion, I hope that we get some sort of flashback or Negan mentioning the fact of what he was thinking in that moment of Rick, like, quote unquote dying. Was he glad at that moment, or was he surprised in a good way or in a bad way? I really hope we get more insight on that, and I just want to see Negan's face when he sees Rick appearing in front of him. And I think that it's either Dead City Season 2 that's going to happen, or a potential crossover spin-off in the future. And Gimple did tease in this interview that we might get more spin-offs in the futures with these characters, and I think that's a blatant confirmation of a crossover spin-off, which they are building towards. Yes, they don't have much of a basis for it because they did kill off Major General Beale and they put an end to that CRM story, but if in the future within these spin-offs they do link some big villain to it and they make that villain the main premises of the crossover spin-off, I think that that would be perfect, and it would be a great way to have all these characters come together. But yet again, I think that Rick is going to appear in the after credit scene of Dead City Season 2, and he would have this moment of knowing that Negan and Maggie are working together, or maybe Maggie manages to escape Manhattan. She goes back to Alexandria. She has a moment with Rick, and she tells Rick everything about Negan, and then we see Rick's face of Negan still being alive, and maybe that might be the basis of the crossover spin-off. Maybe it's to go to Manhattan, right? Or maybe in Dead City Season 3, we might have Rick be another lead character in that season. He goes with Maggie to Manhattan to confront Negan. Who knows? But I personally think that Rick is going to appear in Dead City in some way or form, because it is a shoo-in, right? It is the perfect opportunity to reintroduce this character into the Walking Dead universe and to actually do something with him other than that limited series. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I'd like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And again, thank you guys so much for the growth. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really, really appreciate it. And I'd like to ask you all to like this video as much as you guys can. It helps a ton. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys so much for watching.